Welcome everybody. Hope everyone is doing well. If you're on the East Coast, staying warm. If you're on the West Coast, you're being warm. If you're in the North, we know what happens in the North.
Oh,
We always cold. So anyway, but welcome. Hope everyone's well. It's been a very unusual year. I can't believe the previous year came and went, and we're a full month into the new year. It's just crazy. But a lot of interesting things have happened throughout the year as well from a technological standpoint. We've all been challenged and faced with these remote workflow. Leaving our places of employment and trying to figure out how to work from home. And I think all in all, from a lot of experiences that I've had with people and personal experiences from stuff that I do, the transition has kind of worked in a way. Some of it has worked seamless in a seamless way because people were prepared and working in a collaborative fashion prior to it. And other ones, it's like you did what you had to get going, and throughout the year you just did more and more stuff to refine it. So it was a challenging year. So good to see everybody. I'm glad we have a pretty good turnout today. This is an open forum kind of freestyle discussion on today. We're going to focus on cloud for business and what's next. Where do we see it going? I'm having my warm beverage with some Welsh Gold, as I was told it's called, and it is delicious, I gotta say. So hopefully you guys all have a nice beverage of choice, whether it's warm, cold, spiked, non-spiked, whatever it is. But welcome. We are going to be recording this as well. So later on, if you want a copy, please let me know. I can send you a signed copy as well. I charge extra for that. And if you have any questions, raise your hand. You can put it into the chat window, and Petra will let me know that someone has a question, or just butt in. This is kind of like, there's nothing strict here. We're amongst friends and peers, and it's really just kind of having a discussion of where we see cloud at the moment. So don't be shy. If you have something, even if we're in the middle of talking, raise your hand, butt in, do whatever you want. Get your question out there. So right now I want to introduce one of my colleagues and good friends and fellow pizza lover. I know Nick is going to probably stab me for saying that, but John Morgan, he's the CEO of Object Matrix. He's based in Wales. And we love our Welsh people and all the things that they offer to us, including amazing software layer on top of the amazing piece of hardware that's been developed. So, John, welcome. Nice to see you again. And welcome to everybody. Welcome to all of our friends here. So, I'm Harry Scopus. For those of you that may or may not know me, I'm friends with CineSys. I've been working with the crew for a couple of years now, and meeting lots and lots of people and helping people with their workflows. It's been a very fulfilling couple of years. Especially last year was a challenging but very interesting, as well, as I said in the beginning. So, I want John to kind of introduce himself a little bit for those of you that don't know him. We're basically going to have a discussion of where the cloud is at the moment, where we think that it's going, and a lot of the benefits of it and the different permutations of it, because I think we all use it in different ways. It's fairly mature. It touches all of our businesses, and it's kind of started off as one thing and kind of morphed into another, and now morphing into something else. So John, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then let's start talking about what we think the cloud is and where we think it's going.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Harry. And really good to meet everybody here. So my name's Jonathan Morgan. Yes, started Object Matrix back in 2003, which is quite a number of years ago. Before there, Nick, myself, Francisco, we were working for EMC. We created there the world's first object storage system called Centera. It had positives, had negatives, but it was essentially the first at scale object scalable storage solution that went to the marketplace. So from there, we started Object Matrix. I've been the CEO from the beginning. And I would say mostly my background is technical. I have lived and breathed storage for quite a number of years. And really excited to talk to you about where I see cloud going. But I would also kind of add, just to Harry's intro there, that I very much see this not as a kind of a preachy thing or just telling you about Object Matrix. I may throw in the odd reference to Object Matrix during the conversation. But really, I see this as a round table. So I very much hope that you guys will have comments and you'll bring your experiences to the discussion as we go through this.
Sounds great. So, like I mentioned in the beginning, cloud has been around for a while, right? Even before cloud, we had a form of cloud computing, right, John? It wasn't called the cloud back then, but even before, walking into the NAB hall and seeing clouds all over the place a couple of years ago, and everyone's like, what's the cloud? What's going on here? We already had experienced the cloud probably 10, 20, 30 years ago, right? I mean, what was the cloud back then?
Well, yeah, you can ask 10 different people that question and get 10 different answers.
Right.
For me, my kind of first experience of cloudy things was called grid computing. So this was all about how do you split an algorithm up and run it on multiple parallel machines and come back with an answer. Is that cloud? You could argue it's certainly distributed computer kind of algorithm and getting a result back. But other people, they talk very much about, for instance, mainframe. It's kind of fun that we've gone from a mainframe setup where everybody has a dumb terminal and logs into this machine that is connected to everybody. And then we went to, where everything's going to be on PCs. And then we've kind of gone to where everything's going to be client server. And now suddenly we seem to have gone full circle.
Right.
And we've gone to almost a world back to almost like the mainframe world where, you don't need any power on the edge, right? You need all the power in the middle. And as soon as we got there, people said, edge computing is really important.
Exactly.
So it's a circle. We come around. Anyone who's been in the industry, a bit like fashion, right? It goes in a circle. What we talk about, but in a lot of ways, is the same thing, just in a slightly different way of presenting it, is novel and exciting.
Exactly. So it's just like fashion. You have some bits that look good today and some bits that look better tomorrow, and then you bring the old bits back. So I like the analogy to fashion, which is true. I think we've probably all experienced it kind of going full circle. And then, you fast forward a number of years and, the cloud first surfaced primarily as a big storage platform, right? That was almost like the first version of the public cloud or cloud, you see it, right?
Right. But I would almost stop you there and say, hang on a second. What do you mean cloud? What is cloud? Because cloud it has so many different meanings. I mean, in some ways, you could say there are 4 different types of cloud. So there's the big public cloud that everybody knows about. Quite often that's what people are referring to when they're being very lazy and they just say cloud. But in a way, what does that mean? Well, really, it's a service, right? So it's a storage service initially, and it's SEP. It's someone else's problem, right? You're using it, You don't care how it works. You don't care almost what's going on. You're not asking them, am I storing on a Seagate drive or a Western Digital drive? You don't care, right? If
Right.
there's a disk needs replacing, you don't mind. If there's an upgrade needs doing, you don't mind, because all you care about is you're buying that as a service. So actually, it's a kind of a concept that Nick would have talked about in the past when he was doing his sales, and he would have gone, we're the storage brain, so you don't have to be. You can get on and do your work, because we're going to think about everything that needs to be done in order to be able to provide a storage service that goes through into the future, that can be scaled, that can expand as your needs expand, that has a very low, if not zero, maintenance on it. So once you start thinking of cloud as actually, this is a service that I'm buying, and if that's the right definition of cloud, I would argue it's along those lines, then you start to talk about 4 different types of cloud. So you have your public cloud, the AWSs, the Googles, the Microsofts, etc. This type of cloud, public, why? Because anyone can connect to that service from anywhere. A private cloud could be a data storage service that is only for your company and hasn't got this, if you like, public access to the cloud. You may want to do that for all kinds of reasons, but normally it's performance reasons, it's economic reasons, and it can be security reasons that you may want to go down the private cloud route. And there's a number of companies that do that kind of thing, ourselves included. We can sell the storage as a subscription. You don't have to think about it. You just use it. And then you have on-prem cloud. So in other words, an object store that is in your premises. You might want to do that again. You might want the bandwidth. You might want the economics of that. You may just have particular workflows that work really well in that environment because of the connection architecture to that cloud.
Also,
on-prem
legal
cloud
requirements,
storage.
right? You may have legal requirements or specifications that require you to keep it.
Exactly. Data sovereignty can be regulation plans. It may be location of the data. It may be in Europe. We've got a big thing going on. I mean, who would have thought it a few years ago before the Trump rules about China started coming in? The data sovereignty would be such a huge thing. Where is it being kept? How is it being kept? Are you keeping it on-prem? Are you keeping it in a immutable format that isn't accessible by people outside of your organization? There are all kinds of rules that come up and evolve. And right now, they seem to be happening more frequently than ever.
Right. And then tell us a little bit the multi-cloud aspect of your 4 pillars.
Yeah. So the 4th pillar, there's hybrid as well. So maybe you could even say there's 5 pillars in a way. So hybrid would be very much a cloud that spans multiple clouds. Maybe hybrid would be an on-prem object store that automatically syncs with a public cloud object store. Maybe it's sharing metadata in a seamless, smooth way. And maybe you're using that because you want different performance, different tiers of storage. In the old days, that might have been online storage and LTO, for instance. But you may be having different tiers of storage for different purposes, or
right.
maybe different workflows. Or you might be having multi-cloud just because if you went back a couple of years, what would everyone say? Do not keep your data in one place.
Exactly.
If you keep your data in one place, it's at risk, right? So, hey, I would love you to just use Object Matrix, but really, it's not what I would preach. I would preach, if you're going to keep everything in one location, you're really opening yourself up for security issues. Is there one set of keys? Have you given one set of keys to your data store? E.g. to a third-party application that can access your data store, and you've messed that up one day, and suddenly you've opened up your entire media library to an issue, maybe a application issue, maybe a security issue. there's all kinds of issues. If you're going to keep your storage in one place, you've got a problem. And even an Amazon would recommend that for uptime and those kind of reasons, they say, but to keep data in 2 different regions. Well, of course, you have to pay. If you're going to have your cloud service and you have it in 2 different regions, you're going to pay twice for the storage and the transfer of that data. So absolutely multi-cloud, the 4th or the 5th, I don't know if hybrid was 4th or 5th, but multi-cloud is absolutely essential when you're thinking about cloud strategies.
Right. And especially, aside from any data corruption or security issues, when you kind of, in a way, get in bed with one specific vendor, you're kind of tied to them, right? So even if you're in with, say, any of the aforementioned providers, or even like you said, even if you have your own object store, you kind of tie yourself into that. And if something happens, right, you can go offline. And we saw it recently, even though, maybe some of us don't agree with them or their philosophy, but very, very recently, during the whole political upheaval was happening, we did experience, one of the instant messaging providers, social platforms, get completely shut down, right? And their business was shut down. So not to say that someone intentionally can do that, but they can. But if something were to go wrong with one particular network, it could take you offline. So it's a good idea to have a little bit of security and have a little bit of portability by being able to be in multiple locations or use multiple technologies, right? So,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I would make 2 points about that. So every cloud provider has a fair usage policy, and they have a fair usage policy for legal reasons. They have to have it there, essentially. That fair usage policy is very morpheus and can change. And that exactly saw the point of what happened with, I think the instant messaging service was called Parler, started hosting some, arguably incendiary content, and then it became political. So Amazon decided to switch that off, right? If I have the case correct. So this is an issue. This is absolutely something that can happen. It's not just that. We're talking about fashion earlier, and fashion's going around.
Right.
There was a point where everything was, for instance, Avid. You had to have an Avid server. You had to have an Avid, editing station. You had to have an Avid this, left, right, and center. And suddenly, because everything was kind of tied down to one platform, then it became a bit of an issue. Well, the same is kind of happening or started to happen with public cloud services. Everything became one big, massive public cloud service. And then suddenly, this isn't really quite working for everyone. So you start to see other cloud services rise up. So you start to see some of your data, for instance, one public cloud service because it has good workflows there. But then maybe another good workflow is on another public cloud platform.
Exactly.
So you start to get this issue, right? And then you go back to exactly what happened on-prem.
Right.
You need things to be open.
Right. It's back to fashion, right? One size doesn't fit all. And any of our attendees out there, please, feel free if you have any experiences you want to share, or have a question, please, please chime in, raise your hand. It'd be great to hear from you guys. So let us know. So John, from a one-size-fits-all perspective, we know that it takes us back into the services tier. There are different providers have different advantages, and it's good to kind of take the strengths from what makes sense for your workflow. So you could work with provider A, provider B, either AWS or GCP or Azure or Matrix Store, and kind of, utilize the strengths in all of it. And if you've got a portable data set, you can take advantage of it, right? So it kind of brings us into this whole past year of, where our data lives, how we access it, and kind of like the work from remote work or work from anywhere concept, right? I mean, what's give us a little bit of insight on your whole philosophy of work from anywhere.
Right. Yeah. I mean, work from anywhere is very much the in phrase, I guess you would say. Yeah, for a while it was all WFH, work from home, work from home. Before that, of course, we were working from the office. And now, as we go forwards and as we hopefully exit this special period, shall we call it, work from anywhere is very much where we are going. There are some workflows that will be in the office. There are some workflows which will be from home. But really, whether you're on location, on a broadcast location in a stadium, or if you're just doing an edit from home, the phrase now is work from anywhere, because the systems that we employ be able to take advantage of every single aspect that they can. So really, your data should be where you want it, when you need it. So if you have fast processing you need to be able to do from your servers in your data room in the office, and that is the most economical way, or maybe data gravity, that's where the data is generated, so it's best to live there, you're going to get the best throughput performance there. Well, of course, that work from anywhere philosophy should actually be able to cover the on-prem all the way through to the cloud, if that's what the cloud is, and it should be seamless. You shouldn't have to manage that any more than you want to manage the public cloud piece.
Well, I think we have a question from Steve. Steve, did you raise your hand? Do you have a question or a comment?
I did raise my hand, and I'll lower my hand now. But I mentioned from home and work from anywhere, and one of the things that is becoming apparent to me is that work from home means that you've got this unreliable network. You have an asynchronous data transfer where someone has a gigabyte from Comcast, and it's a gig down, but maybe it's only a paltry 25 meg up. And so you have this asynchronous ability to download gobs of data, but after you've done something with it, you still have to push it up somewhere, somehow. And I know you guys are with Object Matrix, but I'm kind of curious if you guys have worked in conjunction with any kind of peer sharing data, such as with a BitTorrent type technology, or maybe some kind of clustered file system where there's not only the whole object, but potentially a fragment of an object that can be spread across multiple locations for redundancy and safety's sake.
I mean, that kind of segues into a good point here, because working on these pillars of compute and storage, right? We know that you can do compute, you can process, we know that you can store things, but like Steve, what you're saying is that the real hard part is the movement of media, right? It's media movement, generating lots of content, moving it around, keeping track of it, managing it all. And you may have to go between different service providers, whether it's on-prem or hybrid or multiple cloud vendors. But I think that's the challenge that you're kind of representing at the moment, right, Steve?
Well, and to complicate a little bit more, there's probably two main ways that you can get people to work on the data. And that's either to bring the data closer to the end user by replicating it all the way down to the end user, or moving the end user to where the data is by using some kind of PC over IP. And I wonder what the benefit of one is over another, especially when I see video editors scrubbing through video over and over and over again to get that perfect frame set. And if you think about how that data is streamed over and over and over again, at some point in time, there's going to be perhaps a break-even point, or maybe an advantage for long hauling the data to the end user versus doing a remote editing scenario. And I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit about the advantages and disadvantages of those two workflows.
John?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in terms of what you just said there, I would say that was a great summary of the two options that are available at the moment. So you're either doing some kind of over IP, Teradici type workflow where you're remotely controlling a workstation in the office or on a service somewhere. And you're able to do that kind of a workflow, which of course is great because you never have to move the high res down to the person's house. And that quite often is a blocker, right? You just don't have the option to move the high res back and forth to that person's house. Now, there are other bits of workflow that can be done. So, for instance, in a object matrix, you could be doing a partial restore and partial upload of video in order to enable just a fragment of high res to be moved backwards and forwards. However, there are limitations to that, and the limitation is the width of your communication line, and there may not be a short-term solution for that. There is a solution coming, but at the moment, it's really a blocker. To me, it's a little bit black and white. Really, it's if there isn't enough bandwidth, you're going to have to work on your data remotely and have remote terminals that you control with a low-res proxy kind of a view of that high-res from the home address. What's coming in the future, and excited as a kind of a future technology, is the whole 5G, 6G technologies that just allow such a huge amount of bandwidth on location and from potentially houses coming up in the future. But that kind of expansion of bandwidth is really exciting for what we can do with workflows with that, and very much points to a future where that work from home is going to be increasingly possible. So if what you're doing today is a little bit basic and isn't quite there yet, the point being is that as time goes on, we're very much going to see those bandwidths open up and have different technology ways of achieving that.
Right. So that's going to benefit us just by having, the flexibility and the bandwidth to be able to get to our data faster from a lot of other points that we weren't able to do it. Right?
And I appreciate that's not everywhere, and it'll take a while for it to be broadly available, but it is an exciting technology coming.
Oh, it really is. I think I think it's really gonna change the remote working experience, or the work from anywhere experience, when people, do have those barriers kind of broken down. Because like Steve said, I think we take it for granted a lot of times that, in an office environment where things have been architected and designed to work a certain way, and you go to your desk and, most of the time it works in a predictable fashion. But, when you're in your remote location and trying to expect that kind of performance in a professional way, one day it can be great, the next day it could not be great. And I think it does throw off everyone's, not just experience, but we're in a creative business. And, what creativity is kind of, whatever form of creativity you're doing, it's a flow. And whenever you disrupt that flow because something kind of limits it, it kind of disrupts the flow of creativity as well. So, Nick, I know you have some things to say about this as well. I don't know if you want to chime in a little bit. Can't hear you. Still can't hear you.
It wouldn't be a.
While we're waiting for Nick. Anyway, so when his mic gets working, we'll see what Nick had to say about it. So
I just mention a couple of things.
Oh,
So
yeah. I think we got him.
we have a webinar coming up with a partner of ours called, well, we're never sure how to pronounce them because it's a Norwegian name, Mule or Mule, some
Mule.
people say. And it's another company that allows remote editing from their software. It's pretty exciting, Steve. If you want to have a look at that, it's really powerful in terms of the editing that you can do remotely.
How do you spell it again?
It's called Majul. So is it MJ?
MJOLL. Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's the point I was going to make.
Steve, I'll send you a link.
You've got Blackbird, you've got Lucid. They all do this sort of, if you like, this BitTorrent approach of splitting up the file, optimizing it for whatever bandwidth you've got, and piecing it together the inside. And we've certified with Mule, we've certified Blackbird, and we've certified. So you could have your content discussion last time, didn't we, Harry, about some of our customers have staff who have no internet at home, so that's not going to help anyone.
Exactly.
And we maybe think that that's a way of not having to do any work at home. But certainly before 5 and 6G are prevalent, you do have really good innovation happening now, sort of products that were on the edge of the community this time last year are now coming front and center. And it is about that optimization of the bandwidth by taking large files, splitting them up, a bit like a more advanced editing workflow built on top of a file acceleration like File Catalyst or Signin or Aspera. These guys sort of have optimized it to work with either their own editing tools or sort of third-party ones. There's 3 you could definitely look at there, and Mule is definitely a very exciting one.
And this kind of brings us into the services concept again, right? These media-specific, vertically aligned services that have kind of taken us away from the cloud just being a big storage platform or just a big processing platform, but a services platform. And part of the strength of the Matrix Store is it's not the underlying hardware, which is fine-tuned to give you that, but again, it's another pillar. It's a software layer that provides a vertically aligned service for content management, right? John, can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So originally we were thinking about calling this roundtable Cloud 2.0, as in where is cloud going? What is it today? And where is it going tomorrow? And I think Harry summed it up very neatly when we were speaking earlier, when he said, well, cloud used to be a storage platform. Now it's a services platform. And that's very true. It used to be predominantly served by a B2C model. So a model which is based around egress fees, because you may have, e.g., a video that's downloaded by 1 billion people. So that egress fee kind of structure made sense for a B2C model. But however, for a media library, for the kind of performances you need for a media library, and for the types of B2B usage that probably a media library gets used for in your world, a B2C model just doesn't make sense, right? So what we're seeing very much, and it's not just, I would love to wear a hat and say it's just Matrix Store, but it's not just Matrix Store. There are other services which are out there, things like Backblaze, for instance, where they've actually gone, hang on a second, that is actually, that kind of public cloud platform may work out super expensive for the type of use cases that you want to do with it. And actually, it may not give you any real advantage with all of its singing and dancing. And what other services are doing is saying, well, maybe better performance is more important. Maybe better egress fees are more important. And for, maybe data sovereignty is really important, the security, maybe multi-cloud is really important for the customers. And for us, as a company that for 17 years has been providing secure data storage to the media industries, we're very focused on, let's have a service that has media built services on top of that, things like transcode, things like being able to browse, and things like being able to easily manage. And on top of that, have a B2B business model, i.e. no egress fees. And that becomes far more appropriate for the media industry, for certain types of media, not for everything. If you want to have a distribution network, that's not what this cloud is for. But whether it's our cloud or another cloud, which is maybe built for another purpose, etc., you are now very much seeing clouds that are a little bit more tailored, a little bit more specific, and potentially a lot more economically viable as a to start thinking about that LTO tape with its data that's not very accessible, doesn't belong there anymore.
Exactly. So this kind of takes us into the concept of moving away from the one size fits all concept. And again, really taking advantages of whatever permutation of the cloud you want to think of it, as I call it the PPHM, whether it's public, private, hybrid, or multi-cloud, you take advantage of the services that each one of those pillars provides to you, and you tailor your workflow around it. So the future of cloud, we know it comes in different flavors. It's here to stay. We just have to take advantage of it. It also has the advantages of giving us very high levels of collaboration, right? Because it does give us the ability to kind of scale and to break down geographic barriers of having people work from anywhere, right? And anywhere doesn't mean just anywhere being isolated to a geographic region in your country, but you literally can work from anywhere on the globe at this point. So, it does have it definitely has its challenges, right?
Right.
From communication, from security, from all different kinds of things that we again take for granted when you're all together in one place. So moving on here, I want everyone to know that in the chat window we have posted a couple of the things that we spoke about before, the Mule product and LucidLink and Blackbird. If you guys are interested, have a look, and if any questions come up, please let us know. But this conversation is really moving along and having a great time talking to you, John. But you also wanted to give us a little bit of a demo, a quick demo of some of the things that some of the latest things that are going on with Matrix Store, and then I think after that would be great to open it up to some questions to our amazing attendees to see if anyone has any questions on any of that stuff.
Yeah, sure. I mean, in terms of demo, it's not a demo, but it'll be less than 5 minutes. Yeah. Just a very quick look, and maybe raise in a couple more kind of concepts that I wanted to just mention. Sure. Okay. So, are you seeing my screen here?
Yes.
I'll tell you what's going to happen is the timeout on the login is going to happen straight away. So let me sign back in. Okay. So one of the other concepts I wanted to talk about with where some cloud services are going with the kind of services that they provide is that something like a traditional public cloud with an API became a bit of a IT thing to manage. And actually, when we're talking about managing ease of management, you want to get away from that, right? You want to bring it back to nice, simple administration interfaces, but also, work from home has a big issue as well, because when somebody's working from home, you stop brainstorming, you stop problem solving together, you stop the camaraderie, the socializing, the knowledge sharing, the mentoring, but you also stop the ability to be able to manage people quite so easily. So as we go towards, and we're really getting acronym-tastic here. I loved your acronym, Harry, just now. I need to write that one down so I can try and trademark it.
People, it's the next big thing.
So as well as work from anywhere, there's manage from anywhere. Because if you're going to have your workforce from anywhere, you really need to be able to manage them. And if you can't see what they're doing, if you can't monitor your systems and what's happening, and that very quickly falls over. So very quickly, as we go to systems on-prem, systems in the cloud, etc., we need to manage them from everywhere. And I think many of you have seen this before, so I'm really not going to go too much into depth, but when we create a workspace in Matrix Store, we call it a vault. And basically you can just set with clicks of buttons what your protection is, which regions are you going to put data in, which users have access, which groups have access, what kind of access do they have. It might be that you want to limit the amount of storage that a particular project is able to use. So you can set things like that. And you can set things like metadata extraction from the data that's being stored into that vault. So that metadata extraction, e.g., it could be simple things like image data, XMP data, or IMF data. But that kind of data engineering, in order to be able to extract that so that it can later be analyzed and searched, statistics brought out upon that metadata as well. So it's all about trying to create a bed of a service that will serve richer kind of interfaces as we go forwards with the solution, with the Matrix Store solution. So that's all I'm going to say about the admin. As I said, I just wanted to show you what that looks like. This is a statistics and analysis interface. So if data engineering is making data metadata usable, so we saw that in the interface when we create a workspace or a vault, as we call it. Then on top of the data engineering, where we make things useful, we need to be able to analyze that to see if something's changing and be able to raise alerts if something is changing so that we can start to manage what people we're seeing from people. And we need to be able to have statistics in order to be able to show how much work is being done, how much storage is happening, etc., etc. So what we have with our whole Matrix Store infrastructure, which spans on-prem through to cloud, is basically interfaces that can be built up with panels for analysis and statistics of seeing what's going on there. So that's a kind of another service that we build into the overall offering. And then we have on all of those platforms, we have a basic asset manager, which enables you to search and browse. You can play back video. You can do partial restores. You can choose to move data to other locations through this interface. You can do searches on keywords, etc. Oh, of course, it's logged out from a timeout during our.
Yeah, so that's the very important aspect of the Matrix Store and Matrix Cloud is, having that ability to manage the metadata and easily find things is kind of where, something that Steve earlier had touched upon, especially when people are working from anywhere, is like, how do you manage all that data? So that's one of the strengths of, the service pillar that Matrix Store provides, right? Nick, I have a question for you. What companies do you see benefit from this platform?
Well, I think with John showing the demo here, we've got customers in news and sports who need to access their archive content quickly. So Matrix Store Cloud or on-prem is perfect for that because there's no egress fees. but they may also want an insurance copy in a deep archive platform in public cloud. And so that means that they can benefit from both platforms. So, we've got sports customers, news, you name it. And in the demo there, what we could also show you, if you're interested in looking at it, is how we can take the metadata as well. And that extraction means your content is future-proof, because if you've archived your content with an asset manager, we can extract that metadata and make it searchable. So if your MAM, DAM, or PAM is down, you'll always be able to find your content. When we move it to public cloud, we send the metadata with it, because it's your data, it's your metadata. And that's important about multi-cloud. It's about how does your data and metadata remain portable, not just on-prem, but also in the cloud, so you're not tied to a vendor. And that's something has been one of our philosophies since the beginning. So, yeah, like I said, this whole multi-cloud approach is about choosing the best tier that's right for the job. And if you need frequent access to your content, you need a platform, as John said, without egress fees, with media interfaces and good performance. That doesn't stop you then putting an insurance copy somewhere else in a cheaper, less accessible, less appropriate platform to ensure that you've got all your bases covered. And we're seeing a lot more of that happening.
Right. Good point. So
I'm never PPVHM either.
Yeah, we'll just add another a letter to it, right? So we're approaching the top of the hour. John, do you have anything else that you wanted to touch on before we start to see if any of our folks have any questions? People out there, please feel free to type anything or raise your hand or type something in the chat. And if you have a question, let's kind of get them going. So, John, is there anything that you still wanted to communicate to us?
Hey, no, just to say that we do have some webinars coming up with you around going into depth a lot more about what we offer here. And especially around that whole kind of remote editing using not just our cloud, but certainly what we provide, but also other platforms as well.
Great, thank you. So just looking out there, does anybody have any questions for John or Nick or myself, or just have any experiences that you want to share on any of the topics that were discussed? Oh, Steve.
I'll ask again.
Please.
Another question.
We love them.
Late last year, CBS Viacom made an announcement that they were getting into a deal with AWS, and they were going to move away from traditional media centers and be doing all of their editing in the cloud. And the article also indicated a number of other media providers like Netflix and Paramount Plus. They also are leveraging the AWS cloud. What kind of gotchas do you think that CBS Viacom is going to run into with going into a pure cloud type editing arena? Do you think that that's just for headlines and that they'll also have on-prem solutions or scenarios to make that a little more fluid? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, no, they will definitely hit some issues. So there are certainly parts of the workflow which are not working well in the cloud environments. I think when it comes to the colorizations, etc., there are parts of that workflow that even when Amazon, who have a post-production place in London, that they were going to obviously use their own services, they still did things on-prem. Because there were parts of the workflow that you just didn't get the speed and the bandwidth in order to be able to do a good job from the cloud. So there are increasing numbers of workflows which work really, really well remotely. But I think if you're making that kind of feature film or that kind of 4K depth of video, you're not going to get the same experience of watching that on a remote terminal from your home bandwidth And, that proxy that is being played essentially on your screen, it can be very, very good, but it's only going to go so far. So that's one aspect I'd pick on. And a second aspect before I know some of you guys are going to have some great experience and share, I hope. Another aspect I would just pick up on is the cost side of things. So I think a lot of people have dived into a cloud platform environment and thought, oh yeah, this is going to be great. But actually that egress fee kind of aspects of it just builds up. So if, for instance, you have a media library in the cloud, so you have, say, 20 petabytes of data in the cloud, and you decided, I want to run an AI algorithm in order to be able to analyze that data and be able to, say, do a facial search. You could be paying for 20 petabytes of data, you could be paying $200,000 just to go through your data set and be able to analyze it and be able to look for that, do that image search or that image build up of a database. And that may be something you need to do again in a couple of days' time for a new training that you need to do with your AI algorithms. So there are workflows that, if they're on the wrong tier, if they're on a chargeable tier, are going to run into problems going forwards and are currently problems. I know that's away from editing a little bit. And I did see that Jason put his hand up and
Jason has a question. I think Jermaine may have something to add after Jason's question.
Well, it's less of a question, but more just a thought for us all, because I'm having decent experiences. I worked with a director for 3 months, edited a movie through Skype, and it was actually quite good. But the big problem with all this is doing anything that's color or image fidelity critical, when you're like, because that's still seems like something we have to go do color corrections if we're going to do it with a client in the same place or in another facility. In the case of this movie we had, he was in Italy, so we got a facility there where he could just watch and resolve chase. But what are we going to do about that? Because there's really, like, how do we make all laptops look right or get everyone to buy a monitor? I don't know. Any thoughts?
That's a whole other can of worms here.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'll partially take that question, but I think the first thing is making sure that people, going back to John's thing of the new, 5G technology and better bandwidth, lower latency is definitely going to help that. And also, I think a lot of going back into the services tier, I think a lot of the hardware vendors are becoming less hardware apparent and using the strength of their software, right? Just like Matrix Store. Matrix Store, at the end of the day, lives on commodity hardware, but the real strength of it is the software behind that. So if you can take that service and run it in different places, then you benefit from running that service in a data center or location that's near you to help you and replicate it somewhere else. I think the same concept is probably going to happen on the visual fidelity side of things, where when the bandwidth and the latency kind of get better, and these hardware folks start to develop their software platforms to kind of mimic the hardware, you'll be able to send the signal at a higher quality to a remote location. And then, the whole question comes up, how do you decode that signal when it goes there and make sure that it's displayed properly? And that's going to be another problem to solve. If you can't go there, maybe you provide the client with some kind of a locked device, or I don't know if there's a way to send, some kind of a signal. Most people work on MacBooks, and we know how tight Apple is with all of their color management stuff and the way you can affect it. But maybe something like that will happen in the future. Let's hope, because that is another crazy problem. Jermaine, did you have something was it a comment or did you have a question?
No, I was just commenting and echoing what Jonathan said about just having like your data sets in places like I don't know, Glacier and Glacier Deep Archive, and then when you want to attach it to something like, or when it is attached to something like an asset management platform where you want to run any type of AI engines off of it, you do run into that huge issue of what you can do with it, depending on whether it's sitting on LTO in somebody else's closet or not. And so that's definitely something, we've learned the hard way, and we're figuring it out as we move along. But yeah, I was just echoing off what he was saying. It's yeah, you could definitely have some pain points there for sure, especially if you're, we've only been doing this for so long. I think since like 2016, so I think that's still new for us. So yeah, we've definitely seen those issues for sure.
Yep, you got it. I mean, we are all, it's kind of an interesting time because we're all kind of discovering, we're getting pushed to the limit in a lot of different ways and discovering new ways of working, which really, at the end of the day, I think it does really change our industry, and that's kind of, in a way, the exciting part of this, right? And that's where a lot of these vertically aligned services kind of fit in, back to Jonathan's points from before. So it's 5 o'clock. We're at the top of the hour. I know everyone's time is valuable. If anyone has any other questions, please let us know. John, I don't know, do you have any closing comments? And one thing, Jason, we're going to post a link in the chat window as well. But if you look at Streambox does have a software decoder that's coming out called Spectra, which may be able to help some aspect of being able to higher quality content that's a little bit more reliable. So maybe that'll help you out. John, do you have any closing comments?
No, just only to say we're always chat about these things. Hopefully what we've spoken about today has sparked a couple of resonance points about buying the workflow and not looking necessarily just for a one size fits all that perhaps will get you in more trouble than than is apparent at the beginning. And just thank everybody for the time and for the questions as well.
Well, thank you, John. I think there was a lot of, we covered a lot of interesting topics. The one that stands out for me, the one size fits all kind of policy, because, we've kind of, as I think Rob Lawson had posted, he's on from CBS, that, all this stuff kind of just gets recirculated and regurgitated. And, we all get tied into one thing, and then that changes, and then we all change. But, right now we have the opportunity to kind of pick and choose from different pillars, kind of help us in the areas that we need help in. So that's one of the main things that I got out of today's chat. So really appreciate you kind of diving a little bit deeper into that. So I want to say thank you to everybody for taking the time out of your day to have a little chat with us. Wishing everybody a fantastic upcoming weekend, and we'll keep you posted for our next roundtable. If you guys have any topics that you would like us to cover, please send them to us. We're more than happy to kind of tailor these conversations around topics that interest people. Again, we don't have to be specific on one particular technology or topic. So please feel free to email us if you want us to explore a topic, and we'll see if we can get an industry expert to kind of take us through it. So thanks again, everyone. Have a great upcoming weekend, and we'll see you guys all soon. Cheers.
Thanks, Harry. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Harry.
Here's everybody.
See you. Bye.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.